There was a time in my life when lack seemed to surround me, empty pockets, unpaid bills, and a restless mind full of questions. I worked hard, I hustled, I chased every opportunity I could find, yet abundance felt like a distant dream, always just beyond reach. And then something shifted, not in the world around me, but deep within. I discovered a kind of prayer that didn't ask, plead, or hope. This prayer wasn't about words. It was about assuming, embodying, and becoming. What I'm about to share with you is not a superstition or a ritual. It is a spiritual technology, an inner method that uses the power of awareness, imagination, and feeling to awaken the wealth already prepared for you. This prayer made me a millionaire, not because it changed God's mind or moved the universe to pity, but because it changed me. It aligned me with the truth that all things are already given to those who believe, not just intellectually, but emotionally and consciously. In this journey, you will learn how prayer, rightly understood and rightly practiced, becomes the key to unlocking the treasures of your own consciousness. You are not separate from the wealth you desire. You are its source. And once you learn how to pray not with lips, but with identity, your world must change. It is law. Prayer, in its highest and most transformative form, is not an act of pleading with a distant force or an external deity. It is not the repetition of words or recitation of memorized phrases. True prayer is inner reconditioning, a deliberate shift in consciousness that aligns you with the reality you wish to experience. When understood correctly, prayer becomes the act of claiming your divine inheritance by stepping into a new state of being. It is a movement of awareness, not a ritual of religion. Most people pray from a place of lack. They look at their circumstances and say, I don't have enough, and then turn their thoughts to the heavens and ask for help. But in doing so, they confirm their current state of not having. They pray for abundance while fully embodying the feeling of scarcity. This contradiction weakens the prayer. The truth is, you cannot manifest what you are not willing to become within. This is where the real power of prayer lies, not in asking, but in assuming. You do not ask for wealth. You assume the consciousness of one who is already wealthy. You do not beg for success. You embody the feeling of success already accomplished. When you pray in this way, you are not trying to bring something to you. You are awakening to the truth that what you desire is already within you. Conscious prayer is an inward declaration. This is who I am now. Imagine the difference between saying, please help me become rich, and declaring within, I am rich now. One is rooted in the perception of distance, the other in the realization of presence. The former keeps you outside your desire, the latter brings you into unity with it. When you feel as though you already have it, you send a clear signal to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious, being without judgment, accepts that feeling as truth. From there, reality begins to reorganize to reflect your new state. This is not positive thinking. This is identity transformation. It requires emotional discipline. It demands that you turn away from appearances and dwell in the unseen. And the moment you persist in this new state long enough, everything outside must conform. This is law. The world mirrors the arrangement of your inner man. So prayer is not merely a request. It is a creative act. It is the planting of a seed into the fertile soil of imagination, watered by feeling and nourished by persistence. Every time you return to that feeling of already having, you are praying. And that prayer is more powerful than hours of spoken requests, because it is grounded in the one place where change truly begins, within you. This kind of prayer made me a millionaire, not by magic, not by chance, but by aligning my inner world with the truth that I am already what I once sought to become. The foundation of wealth does not lie in the external world. It is built within the mind through the law of assumption. To become a millionaire, one must first assume the consciousness of being a millionaire. This is not imagination as fantasy, but imagination as creation. The law of assumption teaches that you do not receive what you want. You receive what you believe yourself to be. This belief is not merely intellectual. It is felt, lived, and embodied. The moment you assume the identity of someone who possesses great wealth, the process of manifestation begins. Most people try to earn wealth through hard effort alone. While action has its place, it is the consciousness behind the action that determines the outcome. You could work tirelessly and still remain in poverty if your inner conversation remains one of limitation. If you act from a state of lack, your results will reflect that lack. But if your action is inspired by a deep inner knowing that you are already wealthy, then everything you do becomes aligned with that truth, and wealth flows more freely into your life. The law of assumption demands that you go beyond appearances. It asks you to deny the evidence of your senses when they contradict the inner state you have chosen. Your bank account may be empty, yet you assume it is full. Your circumstances may reflect lack, but you walk as one who has more than enough. This is not delusion, it is discipline. The outer world is always the effect, the cause is within. When you master assumption, you become the cause. You begin this process by deciding what you want, and then moving into the emotional and mental state of already having it. You see through the eyes of that version of yourself. You think from the end. You do not ask, when will I become wealthy? Instead, you dwell in the certainty, I am already wealthy. This internal shift sends a new frequency out into the field of consciousness, and life responds accordingly. What's essential is consistency. A brief assumption followed by doubt will not produce results. You must persist in the new state even when nothing around you changes immediately. The world takes time to reflect back your inner reconditioning. But if you hold to it faithfully, refusing to return to the old self-image, everything must eventually shift. This is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual law. The moment I began to live from the end, assuming wealth as my present reality, things began to rearrange themselves in the most natural and effortless ways. Opportunities I never saw before emerged. People showed up. Ideas flowed. It was not luck. It was alignment. The law of assumption teaches that when you change your state, you change your world. Wealth is not something to chase. It is a state of being you must first inhabit within. And once you do, the outer wealth follows as a shadow follows the form. Feeling is the secret that unlocks the door to all manifestation. It is not enough to merely think about what you want. You must feel the reality of it so deeply that your emotional state changes to match the outcome you desire. This shift in feeling is what transforms a simple thought into a living reality. When the feeling of being wealthy becomes more dominant in your consciousness than any appearance of poverty, the world begins to reshape itself to conform to that inner state. Thought alone is sterile if it lacks emotion. You may visualize money, success, or freedom, but if you do so without the corresponding feeling of already having those things, the visualization remains powerless. It is the emotional charge behind the thought that impresses it upon the subconscious mind, which is the creative medium through which all things are manifested. The subconscious does not respond to logic or reason. It responds to feeling. Whatever you feel to be true, regardless of the facts, your subconscious accepts as reality and brings it into form. This is why fear and doubt are so destructive. When you entertain thoughts of worry or lack with strong emotion, you are praying for what you don't want. You are giving your subconscious mind an instruction, and it obeys without question. The universe doesn't discriminate between what is desired and what is feared. It only knows what you feel as real. Therefore, mastering your emotional state becomes the key to conscious creation. To pray effectively, you must enter the feeling of your wish already fulfilled. This is not a future hope. It is a present knowing. You do not look at your current bank account and ask, "How will I ever become wealthy?" Instead, you close your eyes and dwell in the feeling that the money is already there, that your needs are already met, and that you are already living the life you once dreamed of. This feeling must become so vivid that it overrides the senses. The more you return to this inner state, the more natural it becomes, and eventually the external world must reflect it. Feeling is the language of the soul. It bypasses intellect and speaks directly to the core of your being. When you saturate your inner world with the feeling of success, abundance, and fulfillment, you become magnetic to the very things that match that vibration. You draw to yourself not what you wish for, but what you feel to be true. This principle changed everything for me. I stopped wishing and started feeling. I stopped trying to figure out how it would happen and simply became emotionally one with the result. And as my inner world shifted, the outer followed in exact correspondence. The money came, the business grew, the opportunities appeared, but none of it happened until the feeling of wealth became more real to me than the illusion of lack. That feeling, consistent, embodied, and believed, was the true cause of everything that followed. Prayer is not a tool to manipulate the external world. It is the sacred process of transforming your internal self-image. You do not pray to change circumstances. You pray to change your conception of yourself. And the moment your self-concept changes, your world begins to reorganize itself around that new identity. This is the true essence of prayer, not in asking for something to be added to your life, but in removing the old limitations from your consciousness and stepping into the version of yourself that already has what you desire. We live according to the image we hold of ourselves. If you see yourself as poor, limited, or unworthy, your life will mirror that belief in countless ways. It will show up in your finances, your relationships, your opportunities, or the lack thereof. But if you can revise this inner picture and truly accept a new idea of yourself as someone wealthy, confident, and deserving, then life must respond accordingly. It is not about struggling to make the outer world match your goals. It's about embodying a new state internally and allowing the outer to reflect it naturally. To pray effectively is to revise. It is to go back into the memories, emotions, and beliefs that formed your current identity and overwrite them. You are not bound by your past, no matter how real it may seem. The past is only as powerful as the meaning you continue to give it. If you revise the story, you revise the self. If you revise the self, you revise the world. This is not fiction. It is spiritual law. When I began to see prayer in this way, I stopped asking for things and started becoming the person who already had them. I no longer begged for financial freedom. I assumed the feeling of someone already free. I rewrote myself image from one of struggle and scarcity to one of ease, abundance, and gratitude. Each time I did, I was praying, not with words, but with consciousness. And every time I persisted in that new image, something in the outer world shifted. This is the deep work of true prayer, the inner revision of your identity. You may not see the effects immediately because the world operates through time, but if you remain faithful to the new image, you will be astonished by how life bends to reflect it. Do not underestimate the power of simply changing your internal dialogue. What you say to yourself, what you believe about yourself, and how you feel in your own presence. These are the seeds of your future experience. So, when you pray, do not ask to be rescued. Instead, rise into the version of yourself who needs no rescue. Imagine, feel, and embody the truth of your new self, image, and let that image become your dwelling place. That is the true prayer, not words directed outward, but transformation directed inward. And when you change the inner blueprint, the outer reality has no choice but to comply. The power of prayer does not lie in the words we speak, but in the state of being we enter. Many have been taught that prayer is a verbal plea, something spoken out loud or whispered in silence, hoping that an external power will respond. But true prayer goes far beyond the surface of words. It is a shift in identity, a conscious entrance into the state of already having that which you seek. When you pray effectively, you do not merely speak, you become. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. This is the essence of creative prayer. When I say prayer is a state of being, I mean that the very act of becoming inwardly one with your desire is the prayer itself. You do not need to explain, bargain, or convince the universe. The universe responds not to your language, but to your state. The moment you embody the feeling of your wish fulfilled, the prayer is answered because the inner reality has been established. Think about this. If you truly believed you were already rich, would you keep asking for wealth? Would you plead, or would you live in the quiet confidence of already having? The person who is rich doesn't need to convince anyone. They simply are. That beingness is the real signal you are sending out, and it is what the world reacts to. It is not the repetition of affirmations that brings results, but the sincere, felt alignment with what those affirmations mean. To enter a new state of being is to move your awareness from the facts of life to the truth of imagination. The facts may say, I am broke, but your inner state declares, I am abundant. And as you hold to this inner truth, you begin to notice something subtle but powerful. Your outer life starts to conform to that state. New ideas, people, and situations show up to match the version of yourself you've been dwelling in. This is why prayer requires inner stillness. You must be willing to turn away from the noise of the outer world and listen deeply to the inner voice that tells you, it is already done. You rest in that assurance, not as a theory, but as a feeling. That inner resting, that quiet confidence, is the true prayer. There is no need to strive when you know. There is no need to repeat when you feel. And once you feel it as real, you carry that vibration into your waking life, and your actions become aligned with your new identity. I did not become a millionaire by chasing money. I became one by dwelling in the state of wealth, regardless of my surroundings. Every time I chose to be rich inwardly, instead of trying to get rich outwardly, I was praying. And that prayer, silent but powerful, changed everything. Prayer, then, is not something you do, it is something you become. Persistence is the final and most essential key in the practice of true prayer. It is not enough to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled once or twice, and then return to old patterns of thinking and being. The transformation happens when you consistently inhabit the new state until it becomes your natural dwelling place. This persistence is what causes the invisible to become visible, what hardens the unseen into fact. Most people give up too soon. They assume a new identity for a few moments, then check the outer world for evidence. When they don't see immediate change, they revert to doubt and resume living from the old self-image. But the outer world is always the last to reflect the inner shift. Prayer works in silence, in stillness beneath the surface. Your role is not to force change from the outside, but to remain faithful to the new inner state regardless of appearances. This is where spiritual maturity is tested. It is easy to feel rich when you're holding money in your hands, but can you feel that same wealth when your wallet is empty? It is easy to feel successful when others praise you, but can you feel that same success in solitude and quiet? True prayer calls for emotional persistence. You must keep returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it becomes more real to you than the facts that contradict it. Persistence in prayer is not repetition of words. It is repetition of state. You return again and again to the inner atmosphere of wealth, confidence, and fulfillment, knowing that as you do, you are building a new reality within. The subconscious mind accepts this new state through repetition and feeling. Each time you return to the new state, it becomes more deeply impressed until finally the shift is permanent and effortless. Then, and only then, does the world begin to echo back that inner truth. When I began using this form of prayer, I had to learn patience. I had to remind myself daily that the outer world was simply a reflection of past beliefs and emotions. My job was to hold to the new vision, to dwell in the feeling of already being wealthy, and to persist no matter what. I turned away from appearances and returned to my inner world again and again until the inner became more real than the outer, and slowly, quietly, and then suddenly the world changed. Do not underestimate the power of quiet persistence. You are not waiting on the world. You are waiting on yourself to become stable in the new identity. Once you are fully anchored in the state of the wish fulfilled, reality will mirror it with perfect precision. This is not fantasy. It is law. So hold to your prayer. Do not let go. Continue to feel it, live it, and return to it, even when the world shows you the opposite. Because the moment you persist long enough, your prayer already answered in the unseen will become fact in the seen. That is the promise, and that is the power of true, persistent prayer. What you have heard is not merely a method or technique. It is a revelation. True prayer is not something you do to get something you lack. It is the conscious assumption of a new state of being. It is inner transformation, not external persuasion. Every desire you have is a call to rise to a higher version of yourself. The path is not outside you. It is within. Wealth, success, love, freedom. These are not rewards granted to the worthy. They are reflections of your inner state of awareness. I did not become a millionaire by chance. I became one by assuming the state of wealth long before the money appeared. I learned to feel rich when there was no evidence. I persisted in the state of having while the world still said I lacked. And because I remained faithful to that inner vision, the world eventually had to conform. It is law. This prayer made me a millionaire, not because it changed anything outside of me directly, but because it changed me, and in changing myself, I changed the world I live in. That same power is within you now. You don't need more effort. You need more awareness. You don't need to try harder. You need to be different inwardly. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Step into the version of you that already has what you desire. Live from that state, not occasionally but consistently, and watch how life rearranges itself to reflect the new you. Everything begins with a decision, not a decision to wait, but a decision to become. And when you become, the world responds, so stop looking out, go within. Assume it is already done. Feel it as real and do not waver, for in the silence of that sacred assumption, your entire life is reborn. This is the prayer that made me a millionaire, and it can do the same for you.